Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in. As you guys go ahead and make your seats, my name is Drew Gardner with the two Mississippi Museums, and we are glad to welcome you to this week's History is Lunch. We're in our home here, the Craig H. Neilsen Auditorium in the Museum of Mississippi History and the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, and we are also streaming live on both Facebook and YouTube, where you can watch any of our previous programs from History is Lunch. So next week we will not have a History is Lunch for the Thanksgiving holiday. So if you need to get your History is Lunch fix, we'd love for you to go and watch one of those previous History is Lunches on both our Facebook or YouTube page. But today we are incredibly excited to continue a program we started a little bit early today at 11 o'clock hour with a screening of the Head Start teacher training film, A Chance for Change. But we're so excited to continue this conversation today with a group of fantastic individuals to share their Head Start stories as we celebrate and recognize the 60th anniversary of Head Start. But first, I want to acknowledge Dr. Christina Thomas, who put this program together and has been kind of the chief organizer to make this program happen. And so we're super thankful to partner with Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas is a postdoc fellow and civil rights historian at the Center for Civil Rights History and Research at the University of South Carolina. She is also the former Andrew W. Mellon Visiting Scholar at the Margaret Walker Center at Jackson State University from 2023 to 2025. She earned her PhD in history from Johns Hopkins University. Her scholarship focuses on civil rights, education, and black women's activism, with current projects including a biography of Geraldine L. Wilson and a study of the Friends of Children of Mississippi. A committed public and oral historian as well as a digital humanist, she is actively engaged in community-based history work, including the Freedom Information Service Library Project and workshops on community archiving and digital history. And so to welcome our program and our panelists for today, I want to give a warm welcome for Dr. Christina Thomas as she comes and introduce our panel today. Let's give her a warm round of applause.
Not expect them to read a long bio. All right. And the 1966 headline read, "It's given the adults a head start to Child Development Group in Mississippi fights for its life against politicians." This article began with a community group gathering to plan a wait and pull at a Head Start center. It then moved to the group solidifying plans to protect local Head Start workers from attacks. It read, and I quote, "Many other Mississippi Head Start centers have experienced violence or threats of violence. The Bolton Center in Hinds County was burned. Tomatoes were thrown at the home of Shabuta Head Start chairman, Ms. Allie H. Jones, and the Klan told a white teacher in Duck Hill she better give up her job," end of quote. As we celebrate 60 years of Head Start in Mississippi, I start with this article because telling the history of Head Start is telling the history of the civil rights movement. Black communities supported by out-of-state educators, specialists, philanthropists, and volunteers protected and defended this anti-poverty program as it faced attacks from politicians and terrorist groups. We often don't think about Head Start, this early childhood education initiative, in this way. But for state officials, Head Start posed a serious threat to the white power structure, as federal funds bypassed the state and flowed into communities, providing preschool training and opening up a new job force. So imagine moving from working for $3 a day as a domestic to receiving $65 a week as a Head Start teacher, with them actually training you on how to become an educator. The state of Mississippi had the largest Head Start organization in the nation, the Child Development Group of Mississippi, and I encourage you to read Crystal Sanders' book, A Chance for Change, which dives into this organization's brief history and how during its first summer, it served nearly 6,000 children across 24 counties. Despite the harassment, violence, and even loss to federal funding, local people sustained their Head Start centers, working oftentimes for little to no pay. And by little, I mean sometimes 35 cents an hour. Friends of Children of Mississippi, which emerged out of CDGM, went unfunded for 18 months, sustained only by a small grant from the Field Foundation, yet they served nearly 2,000 children in 6 counties. Ms. Eloise Poe of Wayne County shared, of course, people with jobs think we're crazy, working for nothing or next to nothing, but we got something here that's worth more than just money. Now, I could continue, and there is much more to share about the history of Head Start and the countless people who I will not begin to name because our time is limited. And I believe the best people to share and honor its history are the administrators who developed the curricula, the teachers who taught in the classrooms, and the students who filled them, some of which are here today. They hold the history of Head Start. They can tell us the history of the movement. And there are many of you in the audience as well who can tell this story or who are watching online. And so I just want to invite you, if you have been impacted by Head Start, whether it's a child, a student, or worked in one of the Head Start centers, if you could just raise your hand. Oh, wow. So I just want to clap for them as well as we celebrate 60 years. Thanks. And then if you're online, you can drop in the comments as well about your work with Head Start too. And so now this is only one event, but I encourage you afterwards to tell your story or research your community's history with Head Start, because there is much more to learn even beyond these two organizations that can get lost when we do not share these histories. And now, before I introduce today's speakers, I want to thank filmmaker Catherine Murphy and Maestra Productions for fundraising, as well as Marilyn Lowen and Carolyn Primer for their encouragement in planning this event. So first we'll have Mr. Fred Mangrum. He worked as an area specialist guide for CDGM and served as the inaugural director of Friends of Children of Mississippi in January 1967, when the organization began operating Head Start programs in 6 counties that were outside of the renewed grant for CDGM. Mangrum is a graduate of Howard University, where he organized with the Nonviolent Action Group and came to Mississippi that long, hot summer of 1964. His assigned city, Tallahatchie County, is where he served as field secretary and project director. Mangrum also attended Harvard University Graduate School of Education and later served as an instructor and assistant professor of education at Cambridge College and the University of Massachusetts. He continues to live a life of service with his current work focusing on bike education in Oakland, California. After him, we'll have Mary Emmons. Mary M. Emmons held several positions with CDGM and FCM, Deputy Director of Teacher Development in the Program for Children, Acting Director and Associate Director, the Director of Preschool Education. She served as President and Chief Executive Officer of Children's Institute, a Los Angeles child welfare agency for 35 years, retiring in 2016. Her professional experience spans over 45 years in government and nonprofit health and children's services. Through her leadership, CII developed an extensive range of community-based child and family services, growing from an annual budget of $1 million in 1981 to over $67 million today. Ms. Emmons has long been an advocate for vulnerable children, serving on numerous public policy boards, including the Governor's Child Development Program Advisories Committee and CWLA's National Committee on Child Welfare Management and Governance Standards. In 2016, the Los Angeles Business Journal named Ms. Emmons Nonprofit CEO of the Year. Ms. Emmons is a graduate of the University of Chicago, and she currently works as an organizational planning consultant. Next, we have Ms. Georgia Bankhead. Her journey into Head Start began in 1968 when she was hired by Friends of Children of Mississippi as a resource teacher at Tepper Head Start Center located near Isola. Having retired in 2012, she described her tenure with Head Start as the wonder years, recognizing that FCM ignited a flame that spread throughout the state and nation. She is the mother of 5 daughters, and some of them are here with her today, who are proud products of Head Start, having received their college education in the state and been blessed to find employment here. Ms. Bankhead received her formal education in Humphreys County School System, then attended Kahoma Junior College and Lemoyne Owen College, where she earned a BS in early childhood education while employed with Head Start. She also received her CDA certification through the National Association for the Education of Young Children. Although retired over the past 10 years, Ms. Bankhead has maintained ties with Excel by 5, Delta Health Collaborative, Parents for Public Schools, the Mayor's Health Council, the Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative, and the Mississippi Food Network. Following her, we'll have Mr. Leo Turner II, also known as Junior, is the next to last child of the late Leo and Leola Turner. His father was the second chairman of the Board of Directors, serving from 1968 to 2004. He holds an associate's degree from Jones County Junior College, a bachelor's degree from Morehouse College, both in business administration, and associates from Gutton Jones College of Funeral Service. Turner presently operates the family business Turner Funeral Home located in Waynesboro, Mississippi, and they also have 3 other branch locations. He is the 3rd generation carrying on the business. He attended the Bryant Head Start Center at the age of 3, graduated in 1977, and he was the valedictorian of his Head Start class. I don't think my Head Start Center had valedictorians. 3 of his sisters, both nieces and nephews, and 1 great niece attended either Miss Bryant's kindergarten or Head Start. And then last we'll have Dr. Robert Smith. Dr. Robert Smith, I don't think he needs an introduction. Many people know him here, but he is a native of Terry, Mississippi, who is nationally respected for his leadership as the founder of the Medical Committee for Human Rights. As part of the civil rights movement of the 1960s, this organization successfully pressured healthcare institutions across the South to expand access to health services for and in unequal treatment of African Americans. Dr. Smith earned his Bachelor's of Art in Chemistry from Tougaloo College and his MD from Howard University School of Medicine. He completed clinical training at Cook County Hospital and returned to Mississippi as a general practitioner. Dr. Smith is a chartered diplomat of the American Board of Family Physicians and a charter fellow of the American Academy of Family Physicians. He has been president and chief executive officer of Mississippi Family Health Center since its founding in 1963 and remains a practicing physician today. In 1965, Dr. Smith provided medical care for CDGM and built a network of Black doctors and dentists, including Doctors Aaron Shirley, James Anderson, and Gilbert Mason, to provide physical exams for children. All right, we're done with the bios, and I will welcome Mr. Fred Mangrum up to the stage.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Hope I can get through this. Usually, I last about 30 seconds before I start to cry. So just be a little tolerant of me. I feel this work very deeply. I came to Mississippi. I was part of a group called Nonviolent Action Group at Howard University, and we settled. We were part of SNCC. We settled up in the second congressional district in the Delta, and I was assigned to work in Tallahatchie County. And those people, they used to call me City Slick, and then they would bust out laughing, and then I would laugh, and then after a while I got smart and I said, "Why do you call me City Slick?" And he said, "Well, because you're the dumbest thing we ever met in our lives." And they were joking with me. They didn't mean I was dumb, but that was their way of adopting me and bringing me into their community. So I feel like I was adopted by the folks here in Mississippi. I feel like a son. And from there, they said, "Go over here and talk over here, talk over here, talk to this person, that person." And so rather than me being the organizer, they were organizing me into their system. And from that, I began to adopt their vision and their purpose of what they wanted and what they were striving for. Rather than me going back, we can go back to Brown versus Board of Education, we can go back to the Second World War, we can go back to Christianity, the beginning of Christianity, and which was thousands of years ago. But in terms of how we got to be where we are right now, I'm talking about Black people and brown people. But anyway, after they brought me in, I forgot what all that stuff we were doing in D.C. and other places, and really adopted the vision of what people really wanted to hear. And so when I left Tallahatchie County, Summit, and Charleston, I moved to Jackson and began to work for CDGM. As Dr. Thomas said, as an area specialist, when we were fighting for the money, and then I had another little job as blah, blah, blah. And then I began to work very closely with Johnny Mudd, Marvin Hoffman, and Marion Marion Wright Edelman. Maybe you might remember Marion Wright. Everybody know that name by chance? Yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's Marion. I mean, this program. Well, my remarks are really about the people who really made CDGM and FCM live. Without that, then there would be no Friends of Children. But Marion was very central, and too bad she's not here today, around the CDGM program, the second funding of it, and definitely she was part of working with us around FCM. A lot of people don't realize that the Friends of Children of Mississippi was an advocacy group initially for the Child Development Group of Mississippi, and for that second part of funding. And it only became a program of its own once it was cut out of the CDGM funding of 6 counties. Then it became a program of its own at that time. So we have that dual history of it only lives because of the people in those 6 counties. We had very little money, and we did get lucky when we got the largest grant the Field Foundation ever gave out to anybody, which was about $500,000, and we could spread that around 6 counties. And but really, CDG FCM lives today because of the people in those 6 counties. And one of the things that bothers me the most is that once we got to $1.6 million from President Johnson out of his discretionary funds and not out of appropriations, and that allowed us to come back to Mississippi, Jackson, to negotiate with Owen Cooper and his attorney, and Marion Wright and myself, around the 6 counties. Out of those negotiations, we had to give up 2 counties. Sorry. And those 2 counties were the Flore and the Neshoba. And a lot of people believe that the struggle for refunding for CDGM and the funding for FCM was all about the children. And most of it, for us, at this level, it was about the children. But for higher level, you might remember that the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. And at that point in time, Mississippi is going to have a lot of black voters. And so at the upper level, the struggle was really who was going to gain control of those black voters of Mississippi. And so that was part of the struggle as well. And I had to go and tell those people. That we had to give them up so that the other 2/3 would live. And they pulled that wagon as hard as anybody. And it was hard. I'm sorry. Here it is 60 years later, and I'm still feeling that trauma. But what I got of it personally is that once we got the funding, and I moved from here to Boston, I moved from Boston to California, the education that the people of Mississippi gave me, I've carried that to Boston and California. And I still, even though those are urban communities, it's a lot more difficult to work There's a lot more distraction in urban areas than, say, in rural communities where people know each other better. And so, for instance, I've carried Transit Children Mississippi every place I've been, and it still lives with me every day. And sometimes I wish I could come back and continue to work. But maybe I might do that. I don't know. But anyway, the film talked about community, and we saw a lot of applied education, and that's a good thing, rather than we saw active learning going on, and that was so Mary can talk more about that. But I was working with the political administrative stuff, and Mary was out in the centers, and I got a chance to go out to the centers for break, and we were just talking a while ago. These days we can't touch kids. I work with kids even now around bike safety education, and we can't touch the kids. And sometimes the kids need that hug and nurturing, and heck, kids come hug me, I do this. I can't touch them. And, but anyway, the whole thing around community, which we saw in that movie, is what's missing, and that's what we need to bring back. And there's still a lot of work to be done, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that difficult and hard. But anyway, I think I'm going to be quiet. Have I used up my time? Okay. Thank you.
Hello again, for those of you that were here to see the film. For those of you that weren't, I hope you get a chance to see it, because it really brings life to the program that I knew in Mississippi. I'm going to share a few thoughts for me, which were from maybe 3 lifetimes ago, 60 years ago today. While Head Start remained part of my work throughout my entire career, I have not been back in Mississippi since I left 55 years ago. So I am at this stage in my life reflecting on what those early years meant to me and to others. And I'm also intensely curious about how Mississippi Head Starts have changed and evolved over the years. So I'm hoping to learn as well from my days here. For me, I came to Mississippi in the fall of 1965 as a 21-year-old white graduate student from the University of Chicago. My 5 years in Mississippi with CDGM and Friends of the Children were truly transformative for me. The harsh reality of the life poor Black folks was wrenching. I couldn't believe that this was America. The shacks, the barefoot children, the rundown churches turned into classrooms, angry whites torching or shooting up children's centers. Most of what I've seen written about CDGM has been about the politics of poverty and the politics of the poverty program, and how CDGM was an outgrowth of the civil rights movement and was short-lived and was co-opted and watered down by the white Mississippi power structure. And that is true and important history to understand. I want to highlight today another dimension of the CI program that is not given enough attention: the extraordinary educational power of the CDGM model, where poor parents were trained to be the preschool teachers for their children. When I arrived in Mississippi in 1965, my limited experience with preschool education was as an assistant teacher in a very well-heeled Montessori school. This was, as you can imagine, vastly different from what I encountered in Mississippi. Mississippi in 1965 was a wasteland for preschool education. No public kindergartens. 10 years after Brown versus Board of Education, Mississippi was still actively resisting integration, and white parents were leaving the public schools in droves. I could do a whole course on a CDG educational program model, but today I just want to call out two components of the CDGM teacher training programs. First, classrooms with child-directed learning and discovery. And second, teachers learning about Black history. Because I knew just a little bit about preschool education, I was an instant expert in Mississippi. Polly Greenberg, one of the founders of the Child Development Group of Mississippi and an early childhood expert herself, drafted me to help set up a demonstration classroom, complete with children, for an upcoming teacher program. I'd only been there a few weeks when she asked me to do this, and I had about a week to set this up. I was terrified. It was sink or swim, and I began paddling as fast as I could. CDGM brought a radical new vision of education. It hired the parents of poor children, who of course had not been trained as teachers, and set about training them and along with teaching the children. Most of these fledgling teachers only knew the old-fashioned educational approach of schools that they had attended, sitting children down in rows, learning the ABCs. So I set up my instant classroom. The trainee teachers came a few days later to observe, and they stared in amazement. I had, the children, as you saw in the film, if you saw that, but the art center and the building blocks and the play therapy center and things that you do in a regular preschool classroom. And the teachers that came in said to me, "How did you get them to do that?" Because the children were, of course, doing what they do, having a fantastic time learning in a self-directed manner. They were doing things and having a wonderful time. The new teachers soaked it up. Creative preschool classes blossomed in the grimmest of conditions throughout rural Mississippi. One of the other most important components of the CDGM teacher training program was building confident young children with high self-esteem. This was an enormous challenge in a culture where children had for centuries been educated that they were second-class citizens. We tried to infuse the teacher training program with Black history and the classrooms with picture books and Black children. Obviously, Polly Greenberg and I, who are both white Northerners, were not the people to lead and teach the Black history program. We were learning along with everyone else. But we had some wonderful consultants to join in this program, one of whom I call out especially Dr. Geraldine Wilson, who Dr. Christina Thomas here is working on for her dissertation and is really studying her amazing contributions to the programs in Mississippi. But also we had wonderful consultants like the poet and author Alice Walker, who came and taught Black history classes, and several others for the teachers in the program. These Black history workshops created more controversy than anything we did in the training program. At the same time, it was probably the most engaging and productive of the learning experiences for all of us, Black and white. Over my long career in working in early education and social services for children, I have worked with Head Start on many levels. I can truly say that the CDGM and early Friends of the Children programs were unique. Today, 60 years later, we are still struggling with the problems of poverty and poor educational outcomes for our children, and of course, problems of DEI. We need to revisit the lessons from the CDGM program. that prioritize parental involvement and student self-discovery, and an honest and informed approach to talking about and teaching about race for children of all ages. When Christina first contacted me, I think 2 or 3 years ago now, I looked around to see what had been written about my time in Mississippi in the 60s. And I found that most of the first-person accounts of that period were written by white journalists or white professionals who had access to publishing outlets. The voice of the poor black community who really built the programs and the voice of many of the black professionals who stood by their side was not there, or was certainly what was underrepresented in the work that is published. We need to encourage the new generation of young historians like Christina, who are digging into the untold stories of the poor and digging into successful programs like Friends of the Children. They bring a different lens and a terribly important one for all of us to hear. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon again. It is a pleasure to be here with you on this special occasion, as I would say, to celebrate the history of Head Start in Mississippi and throughout this country. You know, when Dr. Thomas first contacted me about this event, I hesitated. And then I thought about how blessed I am to have still been here through those 60 years, not necessarily still in the program, but knowing of the program. So Head Start was like a revolution when it came, because there were so many needs that children, preschool children, had needs that were not being met. And to have children transition from home to Head Start to receive some developmental training, developmental learning, it was a plus for our children in Head Start. Yeah. So when I think back on Head Start and what inspired me, okay. Okay, thank you. What inspired me and motivated me for Head Start was the fact that I knew of children who had a need to be in school, who were not in school. Children whose parents wanted to work, but they had to keep their children at home because they didn't have anyone to see after them. So that motivated me to even think more about the children that I knew and children who could come in and benefit from the program. As Mr. Mangum mentioned and Mrs. Emma mentioned earlier, the pioneers who fought for Head Start were people who had a passion and a spirit, a passion and spirit for people, a passion and spirit for children who were at the brink of receiving what they needed, but they didn't have the resources. So it was a challenge, truly it was, as Mr. Mangum mentioned. I never met you before, Mr. Mangum, but I've heard so much about you from Mr. Marvin Hogan. Mr. Marvin Hogan came on the scene behind Mr. Mangum with Friends of Children of Mississippi. And as Head Start employees, parents, teachers, we all tried to work together, and you know, it was a partnership. It is still a partnership wherever children are. Parents should be involved in their education. And as we say, early intervention plays a very important role in our children's education. And not only do Friends of Children serve the needs of the children, it also serves the needs of the parents as well. Because, as I say, there were parents who had gone back to school, parents who started their businesses, parents who were just inspired to do more, to become more self-sufficient, to just say, well, you know, I'm not just going to continue as I am. There's a reason I need to do what I'm doing. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go into business. I'm going to see what I can offer to my community and the people around me. So Friends of Children was very instrumental in assisting parents with the micros, loans, to go in business. And it was all worth it. It was all worth it because we still, in the area where I live, we still have people who are in business because of Friends of Children. Simple to add. So I will still say that investment in Head Start pays off in great dividends, not only for children, but for families and the community. And we should always remember that our children are investment, our future investment. And I'm so thankful to have been a part of the program for 44 years, to have all of my children go through Head Start. And we're here at this point now where we are still looking forward for Head Start. Okay.
Good afternoon. First off, I know my voice is kind of low, but I want to see, can everybody hear me? All right. First off, I want to thank Dr. Thomas for extending the invitation to me. And also, we first got in contact 2 years ago, and I wanted to jump at the chance to tell my experience as a child of someone who was heavily involved with Head Start and as a former student. So some of my experience may come from the eyes of a child, so that way you get the idea of how Head Start impacted us. Although I came along after integration had started, but we as children were standing on the shoulders of children who came before us. The ones who had to go to the centers where the faculty weren't being paid, the grassroots workers who took it upon themselves to donate food from their pantries, their vehicles, their time. So in a way, I'm standing on their shoulders as well. First off, my father got involved with Head Start through Miss Letty Bryant. She operated a kindergarten, which was in the south side of town where we lived. And the house she operated in was a former funeral home, which closed in 1959. They started after our funeral home opened, and then they closed up. But she got the house, and that's where the kindergarten was. And during the 60s, President Johnson had instituted the War on Poverty, which may sound kind of lackadaisical to some of us now, but at the time it was very revolutionary, because even though I wasn't born until 71, the stories that I've heard, it was a whole different world here in Mississippi back in the 1960s. Things we take for granted, people didn't have. So Miss Bryant got in contact with Dad, and they wanted to secure federal funding. And then there were other like-minded individuals who got involved, such as Mr. Taylor Carlisle, Miss Johnny Miller, Miss Ora Barnes, Miss Eloise Poe. Then there's some who are still living, like Mrs. Eloise Wallace. She was very young at the time when she got involved with Friends of Children. But there's so many to name, I don't want to take up too much of your time. But there were a lot of people who started in the beginning. And in those early days, nobody got any money. It was all love. Anybody who got involved with Head Start, they did it for the love. As you can see with Mr. Mangum, when he becomes emotional, when you got involved with this program, you took it to heart. It was something you really wanted to do. It was something that was in your heart. And it affects you even to this day, because that was a time when you stand outside yourself and you think about the common good. And what other common good could it be but for children, the ones who have no one to stand up for them except us, adults. So during those early days, plus it was the 1960s, and of course you had COINTELPRO and so forth. And back then, whenever Dad and people like Mr. Naaman Lewis Sr. would have to go to meetings regarding the program, they all had a ritual. They had to call each other to let the other know they made it home. Mr. Lewis's common trademark was saying, made it in, he hang up. And that was it. And sometimes you might be followed. You might have people trying to spread division, but Friends of Children of Mississippi prospered because people were dedicated. The adults were dedicated. And Dad loved the program. So much so, in the funeral service, we have to give up parts of ourselves to serve our clients. But every Saturday, when there was a meeting here in Jackson, I don't care if we had 2 funerals, from the 60s until 1995, when I got out of embalming school, Dad was going to the Head Start meeting. He was not going to miss that because that was a program that was near and dear to his heart. He loved it with all his heart. But also, we had good teachers. We had a lot of good teachers. All the teachers, when you're a child, they showed love. They were like a parent away from home. And luckily, I can name all of my teachers like Mrs. Ideal May, Miss Sarah Slater, Miss Cora Gully, Miss Theola Evans, Miss Lola West, Miss Rachel May West, Miss Bethel West. I hope I'm not leaving anybody out. But they all embraced us children and we felt safe in their rooms. And we also had a thing that you might not hear of now, but we had nap time. Nowadays, we with our children, we always feel like we have to keep them busy. We have to keep them stimulated. We don't want them to get bored. We don't want to hear those words, I'm bored. But sometimes you have to slow down. Even as adults, sometimes we have to slow down because nowadays in today's world, everything is fast paced. We carry our phones with us and everything is bombarding us constantly. And some of us have a hard time dealing with it because you see so many cases of anxiety. But in kindergarten, we had nap time. That's when they get all the cots. They were blue cots. All of us settled down. That was after our snack. We would have graham crackers and apple juice. Sometimes we have pineapple juice. Oh, that was beautiful. But we'd all settle down. Some of us would go to sleep. Some of us wouldn't. I was one of those who wouldn't go to sleep sometimes, but I would just be quiet. And then after everything was over, then we go back to rustling and bustling. In the 70s, everybody didn't have a telephone. That may seem far-fetched, but in the days of landlines, everybody didn't have a phone. But we had a situation where we had a rotary phone. You gotta remember, this is like 1976, 77. Rotary phone, we all had to practice picking up the phone, saying in a calm voice, hello, and then you might say, can I take a message? And then you say goodbye and you hang up. Then you got a little paper that had your name. Mine had, this certifies that Leo II has learned to use the telephone. Even though I grew up with the phone, but we all did it. We also had to go to the dentist. We had dental checkups. There was a mobile unit, I remember vaguely. It came to Bryant Center and we all got our teeth checked. And I vaguely remember, but I didn't have any cavities. And then you got a little certificate for that. And of course, we got balanced meals. They may say we didn't get balanced food, but I'll tell you this. I never had cauliflower as a side dish for lunch after I left kindergarten. From 1st grade to 12th grade, we never had cauliflower. But at Bryant Center, we had cauliflower, and it was good. And going back to the adults having love for the children, one time our school bus broke down when we were going home. One of our teachers, my last teacher, Miss Sarah Slater, took it upon herself to take those of us who were in her area home in her car. She dropped all of us off. Then another thing is my cousin, John Earl, my oldest cousin, drove one of the school buses, and I would ride his bus every day except Friday. Since I lived across the street from Bryant Center, on Friday, since my older sisters would be home from school at the same time, I could walk home. But I had to wait until every bus was gone, and the custodians would look after me, because I remember being 4 years old and I was in the room by myself, and then when all the buses left, they would tell me, okay, you can go now, and I would leave, and I would just walk across the street to my house. And the very first classroom I was in was the minister's building. If you're not from Waynesboro, it's still there's a brick building that's adjacent to the funeral home. And that's where the ministers and the Second Enterprise Baptist Association would meet. Well, that became a makeshift classroom in the early days of Head Start, because when Head Start came to Waynesboro with Miss Bryant, Dad, and so forth, the school it's in now was the elementary school for the black children. So we had the minister's building. It was a one room structure, and you had a wide room and a long table, and there was a heater in the middle. So you can imagine a bunch of 3-year-olds in that classroom, but everything was orderly. I have one vague memory of being in that classroom. I don't remember who my classmates were, but I just remember it was rainy, but it was very cozy because that heater was on. And when you had one of those old-fashioned pot-bellied heaters in one room, it's warm. That's enough said. And after that, I went to the Bryant Center. Of course, it was a kindergarten then, because it became the kindergarten in 1970. That's when Waynesboro schools integrated, the fall of 1970. Okay, but I could go on and on because there's so much to tell. But Head Start influenced me because right now I'm speaking to you in this capacity. I got my first experience in public speaking at Head Start. Not when I was scared doing this speech, but because I could read when I was 3. Sometimes my teacher, one of them, Miss Rachel May West, would have me stand up in front of the class, and I would read from a book, and she'd sit right by me, and she'd tell me not to be nervous. So as you can see, I'm a product of what Head Start has meant to me. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Good afternoon. I guess I'm probably the youngest person here. As I look over this audience this afternoon, how many people here, I want to call a few names, but instead of calling names, who are veterans of the Civil Rights Movement? Rather than call names, I do want to say I just appreciate you being here, because you can relate to what I have to say. There is so much. That's Aaron Jackson there. He was classmate with Howard. He was 2 years ahead of me. He and Dr. James Anderson, although James Anderson went to Meharry, he went to Howard. From Jackson, later became head of the Department of Surgery at Howard. I saw Justice Banks come in. You remember Aaron? They lived in the same neighborhood. But nevertheless, I'll start with '63. That was after I got back here. And I, too, hate to start in '63, but it was a great year, and it brings tears to my eyes because that was the year, and I still bow to the Medgar Evers family for the bullet that killed Medgar and took it away from his family. But a bullet that was heard around the world as it has brought so much change in so many aspects of our lives worldwide. His death led me and two other physicians to take on the all-powerful American Medical Association, which at that time controlled health care from the back door to the front door. We decided that we had to do more than demonstrate.
I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you. And we became the first three physicians to 2 weeks after Medgar was killed at their annual convention in Atlantic City in 1963, demand that they come out unequivocally against discrimination of the black patient and black physician. As I said before, at that time, they control health care from the back door to the front door. And of course, I became the star of the show, obviously, from Mississippi. And at that point, I couldn't go in the front door of most healthcare institutions, let alone practice medicine, the thing that I had wanted to do ever since I was 4 years old. Then I'll go on to year '64, where civil activism and divine intervention and Mississippi became ground zero, and Freedom Summer would bring Bob Moses and thousands of volunteers to Mississippi to teach voter registration and education. That led to the formation of the Southern Division of the Medical Committee for Human Rights. Bob Moses made a quote at that time, says, when you're in Mississippi, the rest of the country doesn't seem real. And when you're out of Mississippi, America doesn't seem real. And that's a very important statement, but it was a great year in a sense that COFO, which has been revived, and I hope you visitors who are out of town will have a chance to see it, when all the civil rights organizations was able to come together with Aaron Henry as director and make a demand that President Johnson do something in the area of civil rights. And of course, President Johnson's response was the formation of the Office of Economic Opportunity that would bring about a number of federal programs such as Job Corps and Head Start and several dozen programs. And a group of us from the Medical Committee for Human Rights would also bring for the first time a program called Community Health Centers that was to fund two centers, one in the north and one in Mississippi. And now that serves 33 million Americans, 300,000 in Mississippi. And of course, Head Start, but which we're here to talk about and talk about the importance of that. It was also the year that, and it's hard to believe, and most people do not conceive that he would also use the Black Medical Association, the National Medical Association, and a few liberal organizations politically to bring about Medicare and Medicaid. This was also now at 65. During that time, the children and the elderly was most neglected. One of the most traumatic experiences that I had in Mississippi was to make a house call, and that house call was to deliver a baby at home in unsterile conditions. And most of our infants was born at home at that time by granny midwives. You're talking about tears. That brings tears to my eyes now at the trauma and risk that was taken. And some up in the Delta was done in cotton fields with many mothers with all kinds of unmet medical issues, that some of it was transported over to their children. Most of our children at that time, of course, was born at home in that condition. If you were black middle class, if you were born here in Jackson, you was probably born at the health center at Jackson State, or prior to 59, in an all-black division over at Baptist or university. What we were able to find by Head Start having a medical component that calls for screening, that 40% of our children were born with health issues of some kind: anemia, chronic intestinal parasites, a lot of conditions that should have been recognized because they were born at home, but had problems with vision and hearing that had never been recognized. They say that truly was, Mississippi was closed, a closed society. And you don't really know how closed it really was, separated by blacks and whites. But Mississippi was unique in one way, not unique in the sense that it was not the only southern state that had a white citizen council. You know, Carter was able to win favor with blacks because he was able to prove that he was never forced to belong to the White Citizen Council of Georgia. But of course, as you know, Mississippi went a little further than that, and it formed the Sovereignty Commission with state dollars. And you either got in or out, and the unfortunate thing that happened to the few black doctors in Mississippi, they left. And there were about maybe 50 doctors of my age now in Mississippi, and maybe less than a dozen of us, like Aaron Shirley and James Anderson and Humphrey and a few other people like that, who was left around to be able to shovel the burden, which brought about the Southern Committee for Human Rights. I heard up here today about Polly Greenberg. I got to know her. But Tom Levin was the one that I really knew, and I was that person that served an important need in bringing Medical Committee for bringing Head Start, CDM to Mississippi, as I was the medical director of that first Head Start program in Mississippi in '65. I was able to pull that group of physicians that I've already mentioned together, including Gibbon, Mason, and Connor, and traveled many areas of the state where we couldn't find white physicians or black physicians who was willing to do screening. And we were able to screen those 5,000 or 6,000 kids, and brought about those conditions that I talked about, that I will talk about the impact later. So the results of Head Start for the last of 65 years are immeasurable with the improvement that we've seen not only in education, in academics, but financial improvements of disadvantaged people joining the middle class, more becoming productive citizens. And back during that time, the average life expectancy for blacks in Mississippi was 59 years old, and now that has gone up to the mid-70s, which is a remarkable improvement that came about not only a result of these programs, but other programs. I also pay tribute to the late Dr. Jim Hendricks. After starting that effort with the Child Development Group of Mississippi, he would organize a group of white physicians in Jackson that many times would take care of Jackson and Hinds County area. I talked with Tom personally many times and advised him that the program was going to come crushing down on him because he was what they call a bleeding liberal, and poor people would come to see him, and he said, "Robert, these folks need some money," and whatever little discretionary money he could find, he would pass it out without proper receipts. So anyway, the political structure, as all you know, used that to bring the initial Child Development Group down, but thanks to volunteers, thanks to the Mudd Foundation, Miss Emily Mudd, the president of that foundation, spent time in my house, and she would at least raise enough money to form a bridge between Child Development Group of Mississippi and the Friends of Children, and which is still operating 60 years later. This period also brought in another major program, which was quite controversial at that time, and it was called Mississippi Action for Progress, which was made up of many of our black activist leaders and some white leaders that served 30 middle counties, which brought Head Start to most counties in Mississippi. And to my knowledge, most of these programs are still in existence. I will close by saying to you that that the information that was developed by the Child Development Group of Mississippi and some of the other Head Start programs was passed on to Attorney Wright Elderman, who founded the Child Defense Fund. She would be in contact with Bobby Kennedy, who would call a congressional hearing in 1977, and this is recorded in a book by Bobby Kennedy called Bobby Kennedy's Epiphany. And this Head Start effort has led to millions, if not billions of dollars nationally and locally, not only for childhood education improvement, but for health care and improvement of infant and maternity health and other health programs around the country. Appreciate the opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are so thankful for you guys being here. Let's give our panelists another round of applause this morning. I am certain there are a number of questions that you guys have, and so we'd love to invite you guys to stay a little bit longer and speak with our panelists individually. There's still some coffee if you want to grab a cup of coffee and share stories. I also want to note Dorothy Triplett, who is also on our live stream today, was the Education Director for Head Start in Winston County. Thank you for tuning in, Ms. Triplett. But thank you guys so much for being here this week. to History is Lunch. We will not have History is Lunch next week. We'll be back together on Wednesday, December 3rd for Ted Atkinson's presentation on developing a cultural region, Mississippi in the TVA. One more time for our Head Start panel.